everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. We talk all things NBA and NFL. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and hit that subscribe button down below because it really helps our channel a lot. Also, let us know if you think Gardner Minshew is the answer in Philly or if the Lions are the best team in the NFL. Today, we'll be doing our Week 14 NFL game picks. Drew and Chris are unfortunately both out tonight sick, so we had to call in backup, and our second guest host of the season, Vincent, aka my brother. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, finally.
Yeah, we know you're a huge fan. You've been begging all season to be on, but now it's finally your chance. So
I don't know
glad
about that.
glad to have you on here.
It's glad to be
But
here, I guess.
yeah, so we'll get right into the news and notes. We'll kind of run through it really quickly. We'll start with the injuries. First of all, Taysom Hill, he kind of got banged up last week with a Russell Wilson type finger injury in that Thursday night game loss where he threw 4 picks. He's on track to play though, so looks like he'll be in, which is good. Tyrod Taylor is not good. He had a wrist injury with torn ligaments. He'll be out this week, or not expected to play this week, and Davis Mills will take his spot. Adam Thielen got an ankle injury during the Lions game last week, and he'll be out this week against Pittsburgh on Thursday night, so a short schedule for him, so it looks like he'll be out. Corey Davis, groin injury, he'll be on the IR, so he'll probably be done for the season, which I guess is good for Elijah Moore because he's been on the come out recently. Logan Thomas, a kind of a cheap injury, kind of a dirty play by the Raiders last week, but he'll be out for the season actually with a knee injury. He'll hit the IR. Miles Sanders, he had a decent game last week, but kind of got banged up with an ankle injury, and luckily he's on bye this week, so don't have to worry about him this week at least. And then 2 people out for the year. Marlon Humphrey, a pectoral injury, he's out for this season, and Jamal Adams was announced today that they were recording that he'll be out for the season as well with torn labrum. Those are brutal injuries for those teams, especially for Adams and Humphrey, although I guess Seattle, their season was kind of over to begin with, and the Ravens have already been dealing with a lot of secondary issues, so that just helps. That just hurts them a lot more. But next, we'll hop into another bit of news here. Antonio Brown, I mean, he's always in the news for something controversial. Suspended to 3 games by the NFL for faking a vaccination card. Apparently, that comes with a lot of legal issues as well. It's almost a felony, I'm pretty sure. So, rumor has it he could be getting cut by the Buccaneers, I guess, soon. We'll have to see what happens after the 3-game suspension, but it's not looking good for AB in terms of his time in Tampa, especially that was also dealing with the injury. So we'll see what happens when the time comes, but right now he's suspended for 3 games. Another bit of player news, Big Ben, rumored that this is his last season in Pittsburgh. To that, I say thankfully for them because they definitely need to draft a quarterback. Big Ben's old. He was not looking too good recently. So if this is his last season in Pittsburgh or his last season in the NFL in general, hopefully he finishes out strong, but I hope Pittsburgh takes a quarterback in the first round next year. I think we can all agree with that. Then lastly, a bit of shocking news that was actually announced on last Sunday at least. Panthers are parting ways with offensive coordinator Joe Brady, formerly of the LSU Tigers. That's a bit of shocking news to me because Joe Brady was supposed to be a big-time coordinator in this league, potentially a head coach. And although I think he can be that still, that's definitely tainting his record to part ways getting fired with the Panthers. Obviously, he wasn't working well with Sam Darnold. He was sucking as of late. So, of course, yeah, blame someone. I guess they blame Joe Brady. I think he'll get picked up pretty soon, though. Maybe a head coaching position. I think there will be a few open spots he can go to. Or go back to college if he wants to. He can be a head coach there as well. But those are the news and notes. Vincent, is there anything else that you want to touch on with any of these topics at all?
Yeah, I have a few things. I'll go over a few of the injured players and Antonio Brown and Big Ben. So obviously Jameis Winston is he out for the season?
He has been out for the season.
Okay, so I mean, if Taysom Hill is gonna be hurt for that game against the Jets, you're gonna ask Trevor Siemian to come in, who, he was on the Broncos for a little bit.
He sucks.
He sucks. They got beat pretty bad by the Bills on Thanksgiving, and you can see what he can do, and it's literally nothing. Who else is it? Adam Thielen? He got hurt against the
Lions.
Against the Lions, yes. And if he's out, then you're going to ask Justin Jefferson to carry a big workload because, I mean, who's wide receiver 3 in Minnesota?
Probably KJ Osborne, and he hasn't done anything as
of late. Who is that, though?
Point there.
I mean, fantasy players, you're going to get good points from Jefferson, but if you're a Vikings fan, it's not going to go pretty well if Thielen's out.
Well, I mean, Vikings fans are also dealing with a lot after the loss to Detroit. I think they have plenty to be worried about right now.
right? Their season is definitely going downhill after that.
Yep.
I mean, they're what, like 6-7, 5-7,
6-6, I think. They're just out of the
6. I mean,
playoffs.
they're not doing so well. So Marlon Humphrey, and I'll kind of do this like together. Marlon Humphrey and Jamal Adams. I mean, the Ravens have been dealing with injuries for forever
Ever.
now, since
All
before week
season.
one,
Since preseason, yeah.
since preseason. Are we really surprised that another Ravens player got hurt? I don't think so. I mean, Marlon Humphrey, some of his status, he's one of the best corners in the game, top 5 maybe. And Jamal Adams, not a top 5 safety. He's not very good, but or this
He
year at least.
he only has like what 3 interceptions in his career.
He is, yeah, he has.
Amani Oruwariye has more picks than him this season than his entire career. So yeah, if you're the Jets, at least you gotta look smart for getting 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams, and those picks are likely going to be early first round. I know this year is going to be early first. Next year will probably be early first if they trade Russell Wilson. Which I'm sorry to cut you off, and so that I didn't mention it in the news and notes that Russell Wilson said that he'd accept trades to what was it, the Giants,
Mm-hmm.
the Saints, was it the
Mm-hmm.
Broncos, the Broncos too?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I don't want to go on a tangent here, but I think the Broncos could land either Russ or Rodgers next
Mm-hmm.
or this upcoming offseason. So there you go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But Jamal Adams, I mean, didn't really have the biggest impact defensively this year. But he's still like a solid linebacker when he lines up in the linebacker position. But safety, not so much.
Defensive
And
weapon. This guy.
he's just a good defensive weapon. So I'll move on to Antonio Brown. Once we thought finally he found somewhere to land after all of these years of him being suspended. We thought maybe Tampa Bay would be his final home, but then
Probably not.
look what he does. I'm sorry to say this, but he's just not disciplined enough to stay out of trouble. But I mean, like, if Antonio Brown's your wide receiver 3 in Tampa Bay, I mean, obviously you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's a solid team. They don't really need, if they lose AB, they really don't have anything to worry about. But he's just like a solid wide receiver 3 that you would want on a team just in case Evans or Godwin got hurt. AB could be a solid wide receiver too. But if he's going to get suspended, teams might not want him anymore because he's been on 3 teams in the past, 2 years?
Yeah, something like that. The only person who wanted them was Tom Brady, and he gets everyone that he asked for.
Right. He can ask Calvin Johnson to come out of retirement, but
yeah, that's true.
So now I'll move on to Big Ben. I might have a different viewpoint than you on this, honestly, because even though he's old and we've been saying that he'll retire in the next, like the past 2 seasons, we're saying that he was going to retire. But I mean, last season they won 11 straight. Did they make the playoffs?
They did. They lost first round they got blown out by Cleveland.
Right? Okay. So, and even now, they're like 6-5-1. They tied the Lions, obviously. But if you're gonna ask to move on from Big Ben, you should realize that the past 2 years they've had winning records, and I know it hasn't gone well in the playoffs, and it might not go well in the playoffs this year if they make it. But Are you gonna sit there in Pittsburgh front office and say, should we draft a quarterback and start over? And they might take a few years to improve, because it seems like record-wise, the past 2 years, Steelers, there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, we're saying Big Ben's old, but I mean, look at their record.
I think if you're Pittsburgh, you kind of have to fast track it a little bit. Obviously, the other in the division, you have Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, who could be moving off too, or Joe Burrow. I think you're quickly falling behind. They might finish last in the division this year, honestly. And I think if they were to draft a quarterback, I think Kenny Pickett would make sense for them. Maybe make Malik Willis if he fell to that pick. I don't think they'd be restarting anything. I think whoever the quarterback would do a fairly good job with the weapons that they're already there. They obviously have Najee, Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I think whoever the quarterback is next year, I think they'll do a fairly good job. Whether they make the playoffs or not, we'll see. I don't think they're playoff or division winners just yet. I mean, they still have a good defense, but like you mentioned, there will be time to adjust. But I think I agree with what you're saying too, that you have to look at the resume, and obviously they've been good the past couple of years. So it depends on what the Big Ben wants, because he'll probably make the ultimate decision on this too.
That's right.
All right, but with that, we'll hop into the actual games of the week. First off, we just mentioned Pittsburgh. They'll be traveling to Minnesota for Thursday Night Football. Pittsburgh coming off a really close win against Baltimore last week, and Minnesota obviously losing at Detroit to the winless Lions at the time. Obviously, got the hat going. Obviously,
Mhm.
Lions, huge dub there. Uh, Drew went Minnesota. Chris went Pittsburgh. I'll go first in this game. I've taken Minnesota very few times this season, and every time I have taken them, they've lost. So I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here. I think they'll do a good job. I think Najee's going to run all over Minnesota, similarly to what Jamal Adams did, or Jamal Williams did last week. Excuse me.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to agree with that. I don't know if I can pick the Vikings after a loss to the Lions and they lose Adam Thielen in the same game.
Mm-hmm.
And just based off of that, but also Kirk is 8-17 in prime time, and he's 1-4 on Thursday Night Football. So
Nice.
for that reason, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh, and I don't think it's going to be close.
Well, we'll have to see. I think Minnesota coming off that kind of a loss, I think that would motivate them just a little bit. They are without Thielen. They are getting Christian Darrisaw back, I believe, so that should help them. But their defense is not good, as Jared Goff picked them apart last week in the game. But I think it'll be a close game. I think there's a lot of great fantasy options in this game, so I think that'll be exciting to watch at least.
Mm-hmm.
The next game, which is not exciting to watch, it'll be Seattle Seahawks up against the Houston Texans. Seattle, I believe they won last week in a close one. They beat the Niners, and then Houston lost in a shutout game to Indianapolis. Obviously, Drew and Chris went Seattle. I can't argue with that. I think Russell Wilson, he has not been good at all this year. Even before the injury, I don't think he was as good as he normally is, and I think after the injury, he doesn't look any better. So I would guarantee he gets traded to a new team next year. But I think they're gonna get this win. It should be pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm going to make this quick. Seahawks again. Houston, they have scored the least amount of points per game out of all the teams. They're ranked 32nd. They score 13.7 points per game, which is
Bad.
literally nothing. And I know Seahawks defense is still really bad. Or Jamal Adams is out, so the Seahawks defense might be bad, but I still don't think like Houston can put up points against Seattle.
No, it's surprising just to see how bad the season is taking a turn for Seattle. I think the record is what 3-8, 4. Oh, they're 4-8, but that's still pretty bad. So I think it'll be a one-side game, even though the records are fairly close. Next game on the docket: Atlanta Falcons at Carolina Panthers. Carolina coming off a bye week. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's out for this season. They fired Joe Brady, so they'll have to have someone step up on the offensive side of the ball for sure. And then Atlanta, they were coming off a loss to the Buccaneers, even though it was a little close at halftime. They had a pick six off Tom Brady. They're still without Calvin Ridley. He's eligible to return. He has not yet. So all they have is Kyle Pitts and Cordell Patterson. But I think if you stop one or two of them, you'll be fine. Vincent, I'll let you go first in this game. Who do you have, Carolina or Atlanta?
I'm going to take Atlanta, and I'll tell you why. And even though their defense they're bad, they've been outscored 112-41 since week 10. But everything has been going wrong with Carolina offensively for a long time. Sam Darnold was not it. They brought in Cam Newton. I mean, last game against the Dolphins, no, not last week, 2 weeks ago against the Dolphins, he was atrocious. So everything's going wrong offensively with them right now that I just can't trust them. And Atlanta's defense is not terrible, but I mean, they might have been pretty bad within the last few weeks. But for Carolina to score points, they're going to have to do something miraculous on offense to do that. And I just don't trust them on offense.
Yeah, obviously it starts with Cam Newton. He's been pitiful the last 2 weeks after starting out hot in his debut this season. Last time these two teams played, the Panthers won in a close one. I think I'm going to take Carolina just because they're coming off a bye week that normally helps them. Even though this bye week has come so late in the season, I think Chuba Hubbard is going to have a good game. We'll probably talk about him a little later. Obviously, he's done a fairly decent job as the backup and understudy to Christian McCaffrey. He's becoming one of those high valuable handcuffs in fantasy. And he hasn't really done as much as what you would expect from a Christian McCaffrey backup. You know, obviously you see Madison from Minnesota. He does what kind of Cook does when he's out. And Chuba Hubbard still has to elevate just a little bit, but I think he's done a fairly good job as a backup. So I'm gonna take them this game, although with these type of matchups, you could get burned. So that's a split. So Drew and I went Carolina, Chris and Vincent went Atlanta. But next, we're going to go to a game that's also a rematch from 2 weeks ago, Baltimore and Cleveland. Cleveland coming off a bye, so they went Baltimore bye week, then Baltimore again. So they're coming. They still have the loss fresh in their minds. Baltimore, as I mentioned earlier, lost on an arguably bad call by John Harbaugh to go for two there when they could have tied it up and went to overtime. But they went for two and missed it. I guess it makes sense though because John Harbaugh said they didn't have any corners and their secondary was depleted, as we both mentioned earlier. So I think that might come into effect in this game. Cleveland, they're going to get Donovan Peoples Jones back, which is a good target for Baker. I think he's done a decent job this season. It is at home. Drew and Chris from Baltimore. I think I'm going to go with Baltimore just because of the fact that Cleveland doesn't have much on offense besides Nick Chubb, and I think Baker Mayfield still has to work some kinks out. Although he could air it out like what they want him to do. I think Baltimore might win just because the offense is going to be up and powering again.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. I'll just put this right here. I'm gonna go with the Browns, and it's because Lamar. I'm not saying this. Obviously, we all say Lamar is a running back. He's been in the past few weeks. He's been a running back, and he cannot throw the ball. He has no weapons except for Mark Andrews, which the Browns' defense is not terrible, mind you. The Browns are still a good team. You said Donovan Peoples-Jones is coming back. Baker has a nice arm. He can air it out, and I think that this game will be decided by like one or two plays. Ravens defense is going to get worse without Marlon Humphrey, so I think this is a good time where Cleveland can take advantage of that, and I'm putting my trust into them basically. And Baltimore's not a bad team, but this week and maybe a few weeks after, they're going to struggle offensively and defensively, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair concern. A couple weeks ago, at the midseason point, I said Baltimore would make the Super Bowl, and I'm definitely regretting that now. I will mention one more point before we move on. Lamar Jackson had 4 turnovers, I believe, the last time they played 2 weeks ago. Obviously, if he cuts down off the turnovers, it shouldn't really be a close game, although I still think it will be. I think this is just another good game for Odafe Owe, the edge linebacker out of Penn State. I think he's done a great job this season, obviously kind of getting outshadowed by Micah Parsons in Dallas, but Owe has done a great job in Baltimore, so I think it'll be not his breakout game, but I think he'll see a lot of production for sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing that game. And Baker obviously needs to bounce back performance if he wants to stick around for the future. But next we'll hop into an AFC South battle between the pitiful Jaguars, who lost to the Rams last week in a blowout game, and Tennessee, who are coming off the bye week. And although they're a team on top of the AFC, my hope is waning in them. I don't think they'll be able to do a whole lot in the playoffs. Obviously, AJ Brown is on IR. Julio will be back, I believe, and Derrick Henry is still uncertain whether he'll be making it for the playoffs. But besides that, Tennessee hasn't really done a whole lot. I think the record was good when they had all the pieces in place, but now and into the playoffs, I think they'll coast into the playoffs for sure, I think, but when they actually get there, I think they might lose first round. But this week for the Jaguars, obviously that's not really a tough competition. I'm going to go with Tennessee. Tannehill will probably have to take the game on his shoulders a little bit because their running game is not great. Dontrell Hilliard was good 2 weeks ago, hasn't done much since. But I think Tennessee's defense is just going to be good enough to beat Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence has not looked great either.
Yeah, so this was the only matchup where one team had a good record, like a really good record, and one team had a really bad record. And this was the only time where I looked at it and I was like, why am I thinking about this for longer than I have to? Obviously the Titans. Obviously the Titans are going to win, but as one of the best teams in the league, I'm just not impressed by the Titans. But they are playing Jacksonville. Jacksonville has scored 17 points or fewer in the last 4 weeks. So Jacksonville just can't put up points. Trevor Lawrence is a bust right now. I'm sorry. But it should just be just taking care of business. And I see Tennessee winning. But Tennessee, this isn't going to impress me if Tennessee wins. This should be an easy win for Tennessee. And if they lose, then we're going to have some problems.
No, I think I have more confidence right now in the Colts winning the division than Tennessee, though. But I think Tennessee's record is just too good enough where they don't get in unless they have a major collapse. It just depends on Ryan Tannehill, and then hopefully they get Derrick Henry back, as I mentioned.
Mm.
But we'll hop into the next game: the Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs had a great win or against the Broncos on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, when you're going against Bridgewater, there's not really much to do. Defense had a pick six. That was good to see. And Vegas, they had a close loss to the Washington football team, which I predicted that would happen last week. Um, I think this game will be kind of close. I mean, when the AFC West teams play, I mean, there's normally pretty competitive. And Vegas has kind of been on a cold streak right now. They won like three in a row and lost multiple games in a row. But I think the Chiefs are ascending right now. They started off bad. I'll let you go first, but I think we both know we're going to take this game.
Yeah, obviously this is an AFC West matchup. I want these two teams to tie, if anything, but obviously that's not what this is. This is a win or lose. I'm going with Kansas City. I hate saying that, but I just want this to be right. The Chiefs defense since week 8 has been pretty spot on. They've allowed 11.2, they've averaged 11.2 points against, or they've allowed 11.2 points per game since week 8. And that's pretty good. And the Raiders just don't have a good defense, in my opinion. So I guess just those factors. Mahomes in a good offense, Tyrann Mathieu in a good defense. You just can't stop the Chiefs right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, these two teams are in polar opposite directions right now. So I think the Chiefs defense can be bad at times, but they're like you mentioned, they are doing pretty well. So we'll hop into the next game on the slate: Saints and Jets. Jets coming off a bad loss to the Philadelphia Eagles with Gardner Minshew. And the Saints, obviously, we mentioned earlier, lost on Thursday Night Football last week and should have Taysom Hill back. They should have Alvin Kamara back. And Mark Ingram was actually put on the COVID list, so we'll see if he plays. It's normally pretty close as a timetable between Wednesday as we're recording and Sunday. So I don't think it'll matter if Ingram plays. They have Kamara, and hopefully he's back. He's been out for like the last 4 or 5 weeks. Very concerning for in real life and in fantasy owners, obviously. Jets, I mean, they're not terrible. I mean, they have Zach Wilson who played a decent game last week. Elijah Moore is actually doing really well the past 3 weeks. He's been one of the best wide receivers in football, arguably. I'm gonna go with the Saints though, regardless if they have Taysom or not, just because of the better team. But I don't. The Jets aren't total slouches. I know they kind of they rolled over last week. They was close at one point, but the Saints have lost. I think the Saints have lost 5 games in a row. By the way, we can't forget that. So it's theoretically possible the Jets could win, but I am not going to pick them.
Yeah, you kind of took the word, like right when you end that, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Because in my notes right here, Saints lost 5 straight, but it's the Jets. That's literally what I put
Yeah,
in that thing. But it's the Jets. The Jets, they're not good. But if everything goes right with the Saints offensively, Taysom, Kamara, that's all you really need. But I mean,
true. I mean, just Ingram being back alone should help that offense quite a bit because they've
yeah.
sucked, quite literally sucked the past 5 weeks. So they definitely need Kamara. The offense runs through him, and with Taysom Hill, we saw that if he's forced to throw, he just can't. So I like the Saints in this one if Kamara is back, and probably if he's not as well.
Mm.
But next we'll go to the next team who the Saints lost to, the Dallas Cowboys, coming off a good win, and obviously Washington, as I mentioned, beat Vegas. This game is actually the first game they've met. They're going to meet this season, and they'll have another game later in the season. So this is going to shape up to be a really good game, and just playoff implications. A couple weeks ago, Drew, Chris, and I were talking about how this division is not as clear cut as it once was. I think Dallas, they lost a few games, they made it a little close, and Washington knocking on the door a little bit. So if Washington can win this game, they can catapult themselves into the playoff picture. I think they're already in the playoff picture, but they could find their way in top of the division if they win this game. Drew and Chris went Dallas. I'm going to have to agree, though. I think Washington's defense, although it is good on paper, I don't think it has lived up to the hype the past few weeks. Obviously, losing Chase Young is huge. And Dallas offensively is obviously too good. When it comes to quarterback comparison, Dallas already wins between Dak Prescott and Taylor Heineke. So I'm going to go Dallas, but these are the type of games they lose as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Washington wins either.
Yeah, these are definitely games that they would lose. Like the Broncos beat Dallas, just saying. But Washington has won four straight, and
Hmm.
they're hot right now. Heineke
Yeah.
is underrated. Um, but at the end of the day, Dallas's offense is just too good. I mean, they have like one of the best O lines when healthy. Dak, Amari, Michael Gallup is a solid wide receiver 3 when CD's the wide receiver 1. Um, Dalton Schultz is not a half. He's a half, more than half decent tight end. That he's reliable. So just for that reason, like I can't say that about Washington. I'm just gonna go with Dallas.
Yeah, obviously Washington, like you mentioned, has the momentum, but I think this game will truly tell who's going to win that division. So that's my prediction. Whoever wins this game will win the division for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Next game, I think this is going to be a really good game. San Francisco 49ers at Cincinnati Bengals. Both teams coming off losses. As I mentioned, San Francisco lost in Seattle last week, and Cincinnati Bengals absolutely sucked against the Chargers last week. The final score was closer than it indicated, but Cincinnati was down 24-0 at one point. They made a little comeback. They were down by 2 at one point, but then Cincinnati Los Angeles rolled away with it later on. So I'm liking this game. Is actually one that we split on. Drew picked San Francisco. Chris picked Cincinnati. I picked Cincinnati to win last week, and they failed me. However, I think Joe Burrow bounces back, has a more complete game. I'm gonna go with Cincinnati, and they just gotta get Jamar Chase in it more. I mean, last week it was more the T Higgins show, and the week before that it was more T Higgins. But I think Jamar Chase needs to come out and play like he did the first half of the season. And I think they'll be pretty good. San Francisco's secondary is not good at all. Um, Elijah Mitchell still dealing with a little bit of an injury from the past few weeks. Debo, he might come back, he might not. And Ayuk was non-existent, to be honest with you. It was more of the Kittle show last week. He dominated on the offense. I think if he's the focal point and you shut him down, Cincy should win, and hopefully they do. So what do you think?
I'm gonna have to agree with Drew on this one. And this matchup, or not this matchup, the 49ers losing last week is how people felt when Denver beat Dallas. You just throw away the tape and you just restart the next week. Um, Seahawks are not a good team right now. 49ers are on the rise right now. And the Bengals came off a bad beat against the Chargers last week. And it started off ugly. And, seeing Jamar Chase struggle like that, I know it was just like that one. It was kind of like that one play that we all saw, the dropped interception, or he dropped it or fumbled it and then they intercepted it. Um, it's just hard to go against a team that's like super hot right now, like the 49ers. They did lose last week. You kind of have to just throw away the tape and start again. And Kittle is too unstoppable to go against him.
Mm-hmm. This game is just going to be huge for both teams because they're both sitting on the edge of the playoffs. San Francisco is the 7th seed currently in NFC. Bengals are currently the 6th seed in the AFC. So both these teams definitely need a win here to avenge their loss and at least get them stronger records in the playoffs. But now this is the game that we've both been waiting for to talk about. The game of the
Mhm.
week, arguably. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
The Lions and the Broncos, they played, I think 2 years ago. It was the score in Denver, and the Lions lost because Stafford wasn't playing. But this year, it's a completely different story. Lions coming in on a one-game momentum. Denver coming in on a one-game loss. Uh, Drew actually picked Detroit. That's a hot take. He's calling a shot there. Denver, I think they can definitely win. Javonte Williams, we'll talk about him later. A great piece, a great pick for Denver. I think he'll be the starter. I think he's more of a league winner, the kind of what the Cam Akers was of last season, but a little better. I'm having a hard time picking this one. Vincent, I know where you're going to go, so you can pick first.
A hard time. A hard time.
No, it's not going to be a hard time for you to pick this one.
No, for you.
Yeah, I'm still deciding. You go
No, you're
first.
not. You're not. Okay. Well, for the obviously, like everyone knows, for those who are new or haven't seen me, I'm a diehard Broncos fan ever since 2011, Tim Tebow, baby. But I mean, I'm trying to be unbiased as I can right now, and obviously, I'm a Denver fan. The record wise, I mean, the Detroit is just not good, but the Broncos this year are 3-1 against NFC teams, and they suck against AFC teams. Or 3-5 against AFC teams. They can't beat people in their own conference, but what they know how to do is beat scummy teams like Detroit. They beat them 2 years in a row, or 2 times in a row, I should say. And I'm talking like this because it's just an easy. We shouldn't even be playing you guys this year. should have won or not won. We shouldn't have been last in the division last year. Um, but it, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to say right now because it's just I'm picking Denver. They're gonna win. They're a better team. Teddy Bridgewater is better than Jared Goff. Melvin Gordon is better than Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Javante
Well, hey,
Williams,
hey,
the best
okay, all
running
right,
back.
okay, all right, all right, all
Javante
right.
Williams is the best rookie running back. I don't know what else I'm going to say. Cortland Sutton is better than every single wide receiver.
Well, that's
Peyton's
true.
better than Hawkinson. I don't know. Like,
Okay, well, I'll at least say this because I need to be at least strategic in the pick 'em because I don't know if you noticed, Vincent, but I'm in the cellar here. I had like a 10 game lead before and I blew it, so I need to make a strategic pick here. So I'll say
okay,
this. I'll say this at least. Detroit, they put themselves in a lot of winnable games this season. I think they're better than what the record shows. They could have at least have 3 to 4 wins, maybe. They've lost so many one possession games, so many last second games on losses. The team is still fighting. Clearly, they won last week. There was a good win despite them kind of letting Minnesota in the door a little bit. Denver, they're not bad, and I think if Bridgewater is on, he's on. If he's bad, as we saw last week, he's awful.
yeah,
Like I mentioned, it's going to be a strategic pick. I'm going to put myself in a win-win situation. I'm going to pick Denver because if they win, they'll get the point. But if they lose, I'll be happy because the Lions won. So this
yes,
this is nothing related to you, Vincent, but
yes, it does.
I'm gonna go Denver. I'm still gonna hope for Detroit to win. I think this is a winnable game. Probably one of the only winnable games left on their schedule besides Atlanta and Seattle. But we'll see if the momentum from the win does anything. I'm sure they'll come out fine. Goff looked a lot better last week, and so did the defense. So I think the Lions will have some turnovers, but they'll lose in a close one unless they win, and I'll be happy. But
Okay,
enough biases aside from both of us. We're going to the next game:
okay.
Giants and Chargers. Giants, they're starting Jake Fromm. Do we really have to say anything else? I mean, they've been downhill. They're down bad. They're very down bad. And the Chargers coming off a great win, and they're at home again. I'm going to go first. This shouldn't be close. I'm going to go with Chargers in a blowout at the lock for me. I'm sure you agree. No?
So on my paper, I picked all the teams before. I put Chargers. They won 4 straight against the Giants, and I said easy win for the Chargers. But since you reminded me that Jake Fromm is starting, Jake Fromm State Farm, the
Don't pick
one
the
and only
Giants.
Jake Fromm,
Don't pick the Giants.
I'm still going with the Chargers.
Okay, yeah. I
I
was gonna say
don't really.
you'd lose all your credibility if you on this show, and
Yeah,
you
I
wouldn't
won't
be
be
allowed
welcome
back
back.
if
I'm
you
not welcome
lose.
back anyway. But it just yeah, Chargers last week they proved they beat a really good Bengals team.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's just I gotta say Chargers.
Yeah, and well, I mean, for the Giants, I mean, it's everything's gone wrong. Obviously, they fired Jason Garrett a few weeks ago. Kenny Galladay is not lived up to the contract. Saquon's hurt again. Daniel Jones is hurt again. They need to
Hmm.
fire Dave Gettleman. I wouldn't be surprised if they took Matt Corral in the first round. They'll have 2 early first round picks. I wouldn't be surprised if it was on quarterback. And I mean, Galladay, that's a waste of money right there. I'm glad Detroit didn't pay him because he's sucked this year. So I think Chargers roll. They need this win because the record does not look as good as it used to be, and I think they still have a shot at the division. They just need to pick apart the bad teams like this game.
Hmm.
But we'll go into the next game. I think this is the real game of the week. I think for me, Buffalo Tampa. Buffalo lost a game on Monday Night Football where Mac Jones only threw the ball 3 times. They need to stop the run, and obviously Tampa loves to run it. They love to use Fournette. They'll probably use Rojo a little bit. Tampa coming off a good win against Atlanta. I think this is going to be a good game. Chris and Drew both picked Tampa. I'm going to have to agree with them. It's just hard to beat a team like that. We have weapons all over the field and on defense as well. Josh Allen needs to be a lot better. If they stop the run, I think they'll give them a chance for sure. But I mean, I think Buffalo just needs more offensive playmakers. Simple as that.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can definitely agree with that. Just first off, the Bills beat bad teams and they lose against good teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just unexplained. It's just you don't really need to explain this game. I will say Tampa Bay is going to win. Not I don't know if it's gonna be by much or not because the Bills still have a good offense. Um, but I just think that Tampa Bay has the weapons on defense to shut down Stephon Diggs, kind of like what the Patriots did. Um, obviously on Monday night. And also just gonna throw this in there, a little fun fact: Brady is 32-3 against the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a familiar opponent for him. So
Yeah. And even in, I mean, yeah, obviously because he was in New England, but Um, I think it's just still gonna carry over to Tampa Bay. So the Bills, they beat bad teams, lose against good teams. Tampa Bay is a good team. Therefore, based off of my calculations, they will lose.
Your calculations. I
Yeah.
will mention though, because we talked about AB at the top, and you said that he's the wide receiver three for Tampa. I would argue he's a lot more impactful for the team than he would anywhere else. I think the team has found ways to win without him. But AB was one of the most reliable guys for Tom Brady. He'd maybe get him a lot more work than we initially anticipated. Obviously, when you have Godwin and Evans, you should rely on them too. But Brady always threw to AB a lot. I mean, he was a late round steal in fantasy drafts, I would say, before this season. A lot of people were hyping him up as a late round guy to take. He lived up to that hype, and then he got in trouble again. So, I mean, that's the story with him. He does good, he gets suspended, he changes teams, he does good, plays well, gets suspended. So that's the cycle of life for him. But I think it's impressive at least that they found ways to win without him because
Mhm.
it was wonky. I mean, Tom Brady had back to back games of two picks. He had a pick six last week as well. So I'm sure the offense has struggled a little bit without him, but they're finding ways to win, getting Leonard Fournette more involved, uh, and the tight ends. So I think this should be a good game for them to win. And I think many people are underrating them in terms of the playoffs as a whole. No one really talks about them in terms of Super Bowl contenders. I think they'll definitely be there in the NFC Championship game at least, let alone the Super Bowl. So I think this game is a good win for them if they can get it done. And Buffalo needs to avenge their loss too. Um, we'll have two more games before we go to the fantasy picks. This is a quick division one: Chicago and Green Bay. Bears, they're getting Justin Fields back, so that's good news for them. Green Bay always doing a good job off the bye. Um, I think Green Bay is going to win really quickly. I assume you agree, but Green Bay is also getting Jair Alexander back, and they also could be getting Zadarius Smith back as well, and David Bakhtiari. So adding three Pro Bowlers, all Pro caliber players into that lineup on a team that's already hot, I think they can definitely make a Super Bowl run as well and compete with Tampa Bay like last year.
Right. Obviously, this is an easy one. I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. Green Bay is gonna win this game. I don't know. This might be wrong, but I feel like I think I read somewhere that Lafleur has never lost after a bye week. That might be
That's
wrong.
interesting.
Um, but I mean the Packers. You're not gonna like this, but they own the NFC North.
Rodgers owns Chicago. Literally, he said it.
Roger, what?
He owns the Bears. He said it before. I own you.
Oh yeah, okay. But he might have said that, but he also owns the Lions,
Well, we're not
and
talking about the Lions right now.
and the Vikings, which is the NFC North. Um, and he just owns the NFC in general. So I mean, they're the best team in the league in my opinion. Um,
That's fair.
and I mean, best team in the league against a mediocre team. And although I will say, not a fan of Justin Fields, I'd rather I'd I'd be more willing to think about this longer if Andy Dalton did play. Andy Dalton is significantly better than Justin Fields right now, and even if Fields was healthy, um, it might make things worse when Fields plays, in my
Well,
opinion. But
well,
this is this.
obviously I think Fields is the long term answer there, but this season it's very feasible that Andy Dalton has played a lot better than Justin Fields so far. So I don't totally disagree with you there, but I mean, who knows? Either way, it's going to be a cold game in Green Bay. I don't think either one of them would have done very well um, in that game. So we all agree there. Chris and Drew obviously pick Green Bay as well. And
Yeah,
we'll go into the Monday Night Football game. This is going to be a good game, I think. The Rams and the Cardinals. Obviously, the last time these two teams played in LA, Cardinals won pretty handily. Rams had a good win last week, even though it was against the Jaguars and the Cardinals coming off. Oh no, they won. They beat Chicago last week. They won fairly handily too. So both teams coming off wins. I think the Rams need this game. Stafford needs to play better. He's been playing really bad as of late. Many Chris and Drew criticized me for being a Rams homer. I'm gonna pick them again. I think they can avenge this loss from last time and win. Although many would argue that the Cardinals are also the best team in the league, and they're getting Kyler. They had Kyler Murray back last week with DeAndre Hopkins, so it should be another close game. I'm looking forward to it, but I hope the Rams can pull it out too.
um, yeah. So the Rams have beaten the Arizona 8 out of the last 9 times. But I just Stafford is not what he started off as right now. He's
Yeah.
kind of transitioning from this from this Detroit Stafford to a Ram Stafford who is going to win MVP. Now suddenly going back to this Lions Stafford that we all know and love. Um, he's struggling. He's still a good quarterback. He's solid, top 10 for sure. Just he's struggling right now, and I just can't trust him with Kyler Murray. I just can't trust it with Kyler Murray coming back. Um, and the Cardinals are the second best team in the league, obviously after the Packers. So I will go ahead and pick Arizona like that.
Yeah, so I think this will just be a good game as well. I went alone in that game. I'm not surprised. That could very well backfire on me. But those are the Week 14 games. Those are the picks. Not a whole lot of games we split on. We were mostly in consensus for majority of them, which I guess were majority of one-sided games anyways. So not really going to do a whole lot in the standings, but I got 3 weeks left to make up, or 4 weeks left after that to make up the ground I have. So those are the picks, and now we'll get into the fantasy favorites. I'll read off Drew's and Chris's really quickly. Drew put Russell Gage and Amari Cooper. Obviously, Russell Gage, wide receiver for the Falcons. I mean, I guess he's a good pick when they're without Ridley. Uh, a lot of people got to step up. Gage hasn't been too bad actually the last few weeks against, and then they're going against Carolina, who I mean depends on who's matched up on. If it's Stephon Gilmore, I think it could be a lockdown day for him. If it's anyone else, maybe Gage has some success. Obviously, they got to worry about Pitts too. So I think Gage is a solid, I guess, flex play if you need to flex him. And then Amari Cooper, he had COVID and he was active for last week's game, but didn't really do a whole lot. Had one big catch, pretty much notably. This week, though, I think it's going to be a much better matchup for him, even though it's against a much better defense. I just think Cooper is going to get more involved. He had another week to rest up a little bit. I think Gallup will also be a fine play if you wanted to play him too, but I think anyone on Dallas is startable in this game. I'll hop into Chris's now. He has Jamar Chase, who, like we mentioned, hopefully he bounces back in this game. He had one bad drop that was an interception last week, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know if out of necessity they had to get the ball to Higgins, but he's just emerged out of that team. He started off slow. Past few weeks, he's blown up, had a really good game. So I'd say that's the same thing. Same thing with Cincinnati. If you have Higgins, start him. If you have Chase, start him as well. And then Chris gave one deep pick, probably on par with my Adrian Peterson pick last season. He put Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver. You know, I thought he played for the Falcons, but apparently he's on the Jaguars now. He actually hasn't done a whole. He hasn't been bad the past few weeks. I think he's had 8 targets and 5 targets in the past few weeks. He got like 10 plus fantasy points in PPR last week. So maybe, I mean, if you're really deep in a deep league that you need a starter, I guess Laquan Treadwell could suffice, but there's too many unknowns and too many things to go right for them to even get the ball to him when you have Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and I can't trust that. I will not endorse that pick, and I don't think you will either. But
No.
I'm gonna get into my pick, and we can alternate for the last few guys. I brought him up earlier. I'm going with Chuba Hubbard, running back for the Panthers. I think he's done a decent job, as I already mentioned, filling in for Christian McCaffrey. He hasn't had a blow up game. I don't think he's had 20 plus points yet in PPR, but Atlanta's defense is not good. I think he'll be doing a lot of work in the receiving game as well, get him more involved. Obviously, they also have Amir Abdullah, who I don't think should get any work. I don't he shouldn't be on a roster in general. But hopefully Chuba Hubbard does well. I expect him to. And I think fantasy owners of Chuba Hubbard are rejoicing that, not to root for injury, but they're going to be a lot happier that CMC is out, that they can put Chuba Hubbard back in the lineups securely and for the rest of the season as well. So this week and the rest of the season, I think is a great option. So what do you think about that, Vincent?
Chuba Hubbard?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he's the starting running back right now in Carolina. So if you're a running back one with a rush heavy team, you're going to get fantasy points. Like Christian McCaffrey was a running back one in a run heavy team because he was so good. Now it's time for Chuba Hubbard to, prove and develop. Even, I mean, Cam Newton rush heavy. I mean, Cam Newton's a rushing quarterback. He makes that offense rush heavy. So, I mean, Chuba Hubbard is going to get points. So if you start on, there's nothing you need to worry about.
Yeah. So hop into your first guy.
So my first guy, just 3 words. I'm going to say Gronk is back. Gronk is back for sure. He got 2 touchdowns against the Falcons.
Atlanta. Yeah.
he's going to get these red zone targets for sure. Brady loves Gronk. He's in Tampa for a reason. Against a Buffalo defense that is not hasn't been very good lately. Gronk is 96% roster right now, which is pretty good. So if if you're starting, or if you need a, maybe he's not picked up in your league. So if he's obviously he is in our league. I have him. But if you don't have him, pick him up. He's going to be, he can be a top 5 tight end fantasy wise by the end of the season for sure. And he's proved that last week. And I think he can do that every week from now on.
Yeah, he started slow coming back from injury. Obviously, he had some rib chest injury earlier in the season, but he's going back to his former self. Obviously, maybe you're the owner of Logan Thomas, and he's obviously out for the season. There's not many tight ends with great rest of season schedules. So I'm in my team. I'm actually rostering 3 tight ends, Fant, Gesicki, and Goddard, because I just don't know who's going to have the best schedule down the stretch. Gronk is just becoming a more reliable target, so I happily agree with you, Vincent. Gronk is just a good play week in and week out. Probably one of the more consistent tight ends that we'll see in the league. Also, preferably in standard, but also in PPR or switch that. He'll be more reliable in PPR than standard, but he'll get touchdowns upside every week. So I agree with that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hop into my second guy, another running back. As I mentioned earlier, definitely a league winner for me on the level of Cam Akers, on the level of J.K. Dobbins, but like times 2. That's Javonte Williams going up against the Detroit Lions. It's not the Lions that make it a good matchup, although they aren't great on the run. Madison had a good week last week too with a touchdown. I think Javonte Williams is just young. He's taking over that backfield. He's showing that why he deserves the running back 1. Not only for the rest of this season, but moving forward. Obviously, Gordon, I think he's a free agent after this season. Vince, you can confirm that or not. But I think Javonte Williams is going to be a league winner the rest of the season, starting from this game. And if you have him, he's a mainstay in your lineup for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I like Denver, not only for fantasy options, but this week as well.
I mean, yeah, biasness aside, because Broncos fan here, he has the most broken tackles by any running back this year.
He does break a
He,
lot of
he
tackles. It's
breaks a
impressive to
lot of
watch.
tackles. Good thing for him, you won't have to break a lot of tackles against the Lions. But Javonte Williams is the running back 1 right now, obviously because Gordon has been injured. But the Broncos definitely have a top 5 running back duo in the
All
league.
right, okay. Well, let's not get carried away
Just
here.
saying. But yeah, Javonte Williams will definitely get points against the Lions. A bad Lions defense. Start him in your leagues.
Yeah. All right, and then finish this out. What's your second pick?
My second pick is, and only this week, strictly this week. I'm gonna say Taysom Hill against the Jets. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I picked him up. He's 4K, so he's 43% rostered, which is not very good against a bad Jets defense. He's gonna get points. He finds a way to get points late in the game, like we saw against Dallas. He had a long rushing touchdown. He can break tackles, not as much as Javonte. But Taysom Hill is a solid quarterback you can start this week. And I think he'll guarantee you at least 20 points right now.
Yeah, he's probably my streamer of the week for quarterbacks. I know many people don't trust him after that performance last week. But I think not only Taysom Hill needs this for his confidence, but just for, I guess, showing hope in general. Obviously, they gave him a huge contract a few weeks ago. It has not looked great so far. He's been dealing with multiple injuries over the past few weeks. Obviously, that finger, Russell Wilson type injury, although it's not to that extent. So if he does play, I agree he'll be a good starter for fantasy teams as a streaming option. Maybe you had Tua as a starter, maybe you had Carson Wentz as a starter, and you need someone to pick up. Taysom Hill, like you mentioned, isn't available in most leagues, so I definitely agree with you there. Taysom Hill is a good start. So there we go. Those are the picks. We're the Zone Defense Podcast. We do these episodes every week on the NFL, along with fantasy analysis and breaking news. Drew and Chris also do their weekly Zone Defense Basketball Hour. Hopefully they get that back up running soon. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod and search us on Apple Podcasts. Smash that like button and comment down below. whether you think you agree with most of these picks, whether you think Vincent should return as a host or not, if necessary. Obviously, we had Jordan before, and we have Vincent now. So just getting more faces on the pod. It's really good to see. So comment down below what do you think of him? What do you think of our picks? What do you think of the news notes? Was AB going to be on a team next season? We'll see. Who do you think should replace Big Ben next season? Leave all those little comments down below, and we'll respond to it as quick as possible. But other than that, the Zone Defense Podcast, and we'll see you later.